Good morning, viewers. Welcome to Frankly Speaking with Vibhuti Jha. We are now in that stage of US election. That is the issue we are going to cover, its impact and implications around the world and for the country. That impact and implication are two of my favorite words because everything that happens on the planet, good weather, bad weather, it has an impact and implication for someone. In this particular US election, the impact and implication is not only for Americans in a big way, but also for the global challenge on many fronts that we are facing. And this is one of the things which happened this week was, in my opinion, was remarkably sad. When my state's governor, Cuomo, made a blatant, mischievous statement of virtually threatening Mr. Trump from coming to New York City, saying that he will not need bodyguards, even army won't be enough, he will need to bring an army. Now, the joke went around that he's the president, he has Secret Service, and he is the commander in chief. But that is a different issue. But the real challenge is that a governor of a large state like New York, which was the hometown where Mr. Trump has significant assets and properties, this man opens a threat, issues a threat. Now, if you and I had made that threat, Secret Service would arrest us, because we are causing a threat to the President of the United States. But the governor making that statement, I think if there was a body called Election Commission in the United States, they would have disbarred Mr. Cuomo or chastised him or punished him for making that kind of a threatening statement. But hey, we are the largest democracy. Everybody has the freedom of speech, but that's a wrong freedom of speech. In my opinion, you don't issue physical threat to the President of the United States. The second part is the way how the Democratic Party is reacting to this whole election. I mean, Mrs. Pelosi said, let Biden not even debate because Trump doesn't deserve a debate to be had. And Hillary Clinton told Biden not to concede election after the November 3rd ballots are out. So now there are so many issues involved there. And then we are the Indians here. We are for once being counted in this election. We seem to matter. Our votes seem to matter in battleground states. So discuss this entire thing. I have great pleasure in having some three very powerful people in their own right. I will hasten to add. And Srilekha Pallai is her full name. Srilekha Pallai is in Virginia. She is a professional. She works for healthcare industry in the executive role. And it will be wonderful to hear from you and your commitment to this entire effort. I have Preeti Upala. Her name is Preeti, but she is very pretty too in her own right, as I always like to say. She's connecting with us from the West Coast. She's a geopolitical expert. She has been in fashion and modeling. And it's fabulous to have you here, Preeti. And then we have Ravindra Shuklaji, who is a man from artificial intelligence. And I'm 100% sure he has a lot more intelligence than artificial intelligence. And he uses machine learning very well. So welcome to all three of you here. I'm going to kickstart the conversation with Ravindraji. And with saying very simple part is that now you will see the battleground and the battle for the battleground states getting more vicious. And you can see from the New York mayor's comment that it is going to get even dirtier. Do you think it is going to get dirtier? Or do you think that wiser, sane wisdom will prevail?
Dhanyavad Vibhuti ji. Good morning, all the viewers. And thanks for giving us this platform to share our views, ideas, and opinion. So coming back to topic, definitely this is a very, very critical election. This is very different than the other election what has been happened before, because a lot of things are at stake right now. Looking at the geopolitical scenario, looking at the situation in the country. So look at the simple fact, like if, as you said, if there was a normal citizen making that kind of comment against president, he would have been like in serious legal trouble. But now we are having an elected official it's just that he's from another party. He's having his agenda. And then the VCS is so serious, open. The VCS is so deep, we can say deep-rooted hatred that they are trying to threaten another elected official from the overall country. Look at the position. A mayor of like city is threatening the president of United States. So what is really happening, if you see, they are not fearing, they're not fearing the consequences. They're not fearing they don't want to follow law and order. And if this is the way the trend is going to continue, things is going to get even much more uglier. And as people need to react to this kind of a statement, and they need to tell this is not the way. You have to exchange your point of view. Even if you have a differences, there's a way to bring out your differences. But just look at, so I'm just what I am expecting. People reactions should stop this kind of vicious hatred, and then people can go back to the policies agenda. They can the debate can be much more civilized. I'm expecting. I'm still hopeful, Vibhuti, like pressure is going to put this kind of statement behind the scene.
I hope so too, because eventually we are human beings. We are prone to making mistakes, but there are times when we can correct our wrong action and wrong words. Srilekha ji, one of the attacks with Mr. Trump is having to bear is how he has dealt with the coronavirus situation. Now, we all know that coronavirus has been country neutral, gender neutral, rich, poor neutral, religion neutral, every sense it has been neutral. And we also know that in the past, the information flow about coronavirus was not adequate. Now, to the three big states, California, New York, and Washington, New Jersey, Portland, Oregon, these were very badly hit, and these states received super help from the president. And the governors of these states are on record, on TV, commending the president and his team for the support they extended, including the Navy hospital that came to New York and California, although nobody went in there, but that was the support extended. So how fair and dishonest is the attack on president that he did nothing, whereas these matters are state matters. And Cuomo people are saying that Cuomo is personally responsible for 11,000 deaths of senior citizens in New York State and New York City. Your thought on this aspect, whether how much blame, I mean, it is easy to be wise after the event, 2020 wisdom is easy. I could have done this, I could have done that, but it is in the moment. How much do you think the Democratic Party is fair in accusing Trump for the tragedy that is happening in the US?
Vibhuti, I'm glad you asked me the question. As a healthcare professional, I passionately feel that death is not acceptable. And with all that in my heart, I can simply say that President Trump did the best to his abilities, knowing that condition is pandemic. Right from the get-go, communist China has never revealed the extent of the damage this coronavirus was doing, and literally held the media did not even expose it to the media. Considering the fact that Trump took earlier steps in February to ensure that no flights were coming through from China, saved millions of lives. And from that point onwards, for the listeners to remind, that was the time when Nancy Pelosi was in Chinese markets in California saying that what Trump is doing is racist and xenophobic. We need to remind that. And that was the time when Joe Biden also tweeted saying that what Trump did was unacceptable and he's a racist for doing that. Right from the get-go, Trump involved Mr. Fauci. Mr. Fauci is the infectious control expert. As a healthcare professional, I can tell you that we did not have lack of PPE. I also feel very passionately about nursing home. Just in Northern Virginia, we are not sending our patients to nursing homes if we feel that there is an outbreak in nursing home. Whereas Mr. Cuomo in New York City pushed all patients into nursing home, knowing that there is an outbreak, causing the wreck in the New York City. I've had lots of nurses that I work with and lots of nurses that I know of has traveled to New York just to kind of help out with the situation. And that all happened due to the reckless policies of Cuomo. If he can only be reflective and think it through on the things that he has done versus blame Trump, he would have saved lots of lives. I think Trump did not leave any stone unturned. He introduced a policy, he introduced a process called WARP process to ensure that vaccine process, there is no bureaucracy in getting the vaccine faster to us. He made sure he faced reporters on a daily basis to ensure that he comes. The only thing probably he could have done better is instituted mask policy sooner than later, but he had his own reasons for it. But that being said, I think, long story short, I think Trump did not leave any stone unturned. In fact, I think liberals went back and forth, flip-flopped based on what the circumstances were. If Trump had not taken the action, we would have lost millions of lives. So I'm very proud of President for involving every medical health professionals and every first responders and every entrepreneur in the world, and instigated private businesses and challenged and empowered them to take care of this. As a healthcare professional, I can attest to you that he's done a phenomenal job.
It is very comforting and very assuring, because you are not a layperson, you belong to that domain and you have been dealing with this scenario. So your words matter to me and to the audiences who are listening to you today. Because and this word must reach out to the rest of the world, that while the media plays Mr. Trump in a very negative way, there has to be a recognition at some point. In my humble opinion, win or lose, I think 20 years, 30 years, 40 years from now, history will begin to treat Mr. Trump more reasonably than the current media or the Democratic Party is giving him credit for. Coming to you, Preeti, I remember reading your article, you sent it to me, in which you gave reasons and reasonings as to why Mr. Trump will win the election. Since then, that was 3 to 4 months ago, or a little longer, to now, given the polls, given the fact that Joe Biden, I mean, he's a funny guy. I mean, I liked him when he was campaigning for himself in 2008. You know, he was a funny guy, but dangerously funny today, I would put him. He's dangerously funny because he has been in politics for last 47, 50 years. Half a century, my God, I was just a toddler at that time. So Mr. Biden was 50 years he has been in the swamp, right? He has been for 8 years as Obama's vice president. And what bothers me a lot more is the fact that all the problems of the society that is on the surface, burning and boiling, whether it's Black Lives Matter or the social unrest caused by social dissensions, or the gun part of it, how come Obama and Biden did nothing for 8 years being in power? I mean, Obama had time to write a DACA executive order. Why didn't he issue an executive order for gun control, gun measures, and also for, you know, improving the quality of Black lives, which actually improved during Trump's regime? So share your thoughts on this matter, and then we will switch over to geopolitical aspect as well of that later.
All right. Namaste, Vibhuti ji, and namaste to your wonderful audience. I'm so honored to be on your show. Thank you for having me. Yes, I reflect on that article that I wrote for the Center for Indic Studies. And I was asked to do an analysis study of this election. And this was 6 months ago, by the way, before the lockdown. So I had these points that I was looking at. And, it's psephology and sort of polling analysis is an interesting thing, because usually people who do it are very independent, like myself. I am just an independent person looking at all of this as a concerned citizen and looking at data and trends and global momentum and energy. And it's not, there's no bias, or I'm not swinging one way or another. I don't have a personal, I'm not supporting anybody in particular. I just want the best thing for the country and the world at large. And I realized that the global trend out there very much reflects what's happening in America. So a few points that I want to touch on quickly is number one, this really the name of the game is globalization versus nationalism. I think this corona is really a manifestation of that conflict, where I think if there's one thing that COVID has taught us is that globalism on this mass level does not work, because corona is a product of that globalism and being entrenched in global supply chains. When you're so dependent on one country, that it's a domino effect. When one thing goes wrong, everything goes wrong. And now the whole world is embroiled in this economic disaster. So I think people are waking up. These trends have been going on for several years, I'd say a good 5 years or so, and we can see this in India as well as the US. But people are really realizing that national interests are important, and you don't want to really expose yourself so much to globalism. The second one is socialism slash communism versus capitalism and free market. This is a debate that's had, on debate stages and so on. But I think in the world, we're seeing it actually play out. And it's the authoritative communist and the sort of a far socialist extreme socialist countries that are really not doing well. And again, it's a debate that people like to opine on. But when you look at the facts on the ground, free market is the way to go. And capitalism, which is a free system where everybody can get there if they have the right intentions and work hard and so on, that's really the key here. And again, I think in America, it's really not a debate anymore. I think we can look at rogue actors out there, and we know the kind of governance model that they have, and we know what kind of system the US has. And I think the US has the best system in the world. That's why Indians do so well here, right? We're the most educated and wealthiest group in the greatest country in the world because of this capitalist system. And
yeah,
then
and
the other one,
you are totally agree with you about the capitalist system, because people who hate America, they also want to come to America, right?
yes.
And they will give an arm and a leg to come to America. So the question here is that what is it that drives the Democratic Party? Democratic Party operates on two fundamental tenets that they have put their structure on. The whole edifice is based on two essential structures. One of them is unfettered immigration. And the second one is give things free to people. These are the two promises which is a very attractive slogan. But in reality, I'm reminded of one of the beautiful books I read. It's so easy to promise to give what you don't have, and you don't have to give, right? So for the Democratic Party leadership to say, I will give you this free and that free, in a country that taught us there is no free lunch, that itself is a big lie.
Yes.
And how people fall to that, is it because they are simple, or they are just gullible, or this is their pious hope that somebody is doing something for us? But that's a point we will dwell upon it more. But coming back to election, I would like to start with you again now, reverse the clock. So Ravindraji, you will have to wait for your turn now. So reversing the clock on the fact that Joe Biden is 78 years of age. If he wins, he will be the oldest person to be the president. And I have a feeling that he chose Kamala Harris for a very specific purpose, because she was a presidential candidate, even though her presidential candidate campaign was a failure. She totally failed in that entire thing. So to come to the scenario as vice president, she is Black, she is very attractive. She was Attorney General of good competence of being a lawyer in California. So she has all the professional credentials that support her. But I have a feeling there's a bigger play. I think Mr. Biden will retire or resign on health conditions, and he will have the credit of anointing the first woman as the president of America, who will have a 3-year run of her own policies. And that will allow him to entrench the return of Obama policies. how do you feel as an Indian woman who has never, Kamala Harris never championed her Indian heritage, that her mother was an Indian from Tamil Nadu, a Brahmin, and Brahmins are hated in Tamil Nadu. Maybe that is what persuaded her to leave Tamil Nadu in the first place. And she comes here. I believe there was a birth certificate in which she says she's a Caucasian, right or wrong. So tell me about Kamala, your feelings, how effective she is going to be. Is she a winning candidate for Joe Biden, or is she just a crutch for Biden to latch on or lean on for the women votes?
Yeah, that's a great point. I think a candidate Biden wants to be known as the president who anointed the first Indian American president. You know, that's probably what his best case scenario. And I think as an Indian American, our community, I must say, is very divided on this. I didn't realize it is as divided as it's appearing to be. And yes, you make great points. This is a person who has, in her entire career, she has never used the Indian card. She doesn't make a big deal out of her Indian heritage. She's always tried to appeal to the African American market. And I mean, I understand it from a numbers point of view, but but I think also the whole black thing is a bit, no, I mean, half Jamaican and black, it makes sense, but then she's not African American, is she? Again, so this is where identity politics ends up becoming a problem. The wise factions of our society are very concerned because we don't care about a last name or brown skin. We care about policy, rhetoric, and we've seen with key players, including her from the DNC, their stances on the actions of the Indian government, such as 370, CAA, NRC, and so on and so forth. And I had probably expected more from her because she's not like that far progressive liberal side. In fact, that side actually despises her, which is ironic. And there will be a split, I think, within the DNC because they look at her as some corporate establishment character. But she's peddling the same tenor as them. So that's problematic for us because look, the government of India, these are internal matters in a sovereign country. They have every right to do the right thing for the best action for themselves. And the US and certainly a political party has no right to make the virtual signals that they've been doing. So the smart Indian Americans are questioning, they're wary. I want to give her some credit. Look, she is obviously an intelligent, hardworking person. I also think that she is wise enough. She's not that radical. I think if educated enough, and if the right lobby sort of persuades and seduces her, she could change her stance on things. I think that's the only silver lining I see. Whereas I think she will go where she needs to go. So I think we need to step up and be a more powerful lobby.
That's my take. That was a very interesting statement, that she will change from time to time, or she will go where she has to go. That is classic political step taking, because you meander, you adopt change, you accept change, then you say, I have a right to change my point of view, and I learned, and those things are fine. But Srilekha ji, coming to you, every Indian I coined a phrase which I think I mentioned in some time, word called sentimotional, sentimental and emotional, right? So why are Indians going so sentimental about her, whereas Kamala is only Kamala by her name? There is nothing Indian about her, in my opinion. And I applaud her for her political success or her career success. But what I'm saying that, come on, Indians, don't need to go mushy over her about her Indianness. She's not. She has accepted her black part of her life. She knows her constituency is much bigger there than the Indian constituency. So there's nothing wrong in her adopting a particular approach. I'm saying she's just another VP candidate. And we Indians need not go overboard on this aspect. Your thoughts?
So Vibhuti ji, I was hearing what Preeti ji was speaking, and I'm kind of hearing your commentary. I can see why why Preeti Ji is kind of calling her as not so progressive, not so liberal, as a geopolitical analyst and as an independent. But I think as a conservative woman of color, I have to slightly disagree. I think Kamala has gone as liberal as I possibly can imagine. I will tell a little bit about Kamala, and her policies can be debated for hours. And I know that we only have a couple of minutes. So I'm going to kind of make some very specific points. I consider myself as a feminist who support every woman that is on the stage until Hillary came forward. Now I'm starting to back away from my own statement, saying that I don't think I'm a feminist at all. I think I support whoever is talented, doesn't matter whether they're bisexual, heterosexual, or they're female or male. And that, it really truly doesn't matter of the color at all. So I'll tell you a little bit about Kamala Harris. She claims that this country is not ready for a woman of color to be president. I think that's a rot. What the country is not ready for is another cynical and self-serving bully in chief, who in her case is masquerading as a progressive. She calls herself as progressive, but I think she's ultra liberal and she's very self-serving. We can see her, how she started off her being an attorney general, how she got her post. If Kamala Harris, if she falls from grace during her presidential bid, that could be attributed to her gender and mixed Indian and African American heritage, then why would she never shot up in the first place? In the same context, I also would like to add that Harris is a notorious anti-Hindu bigot. And I'm not saying that because I'm a Hindu, I am saying that as an American, as an Indian American. The fact of the matter is that Harris has crashed not only among general election voters, but even among progressive ones in the Democratic primaries. And that's precisely, I just don't think she's the right candidate. Coming to your question about why are Indians going mushy over her is, I don't agree with you. I don't think Indians are going mushy over her anymore. Probably they did on the first day. It's like honeymoon period, right? You do that in the first 2-3 days. But then they started seeing her anti-radical policies when it comes to her policies during her attorney general. I want to give credit to Indian Americans and say we are very bright. There is a reason why we are shining stars of this country. And I just don't think we are falling for that crap. And I would be very shocked if we do fall for that crap. So
I
yeah.
definitely admire your, the choice of words and the conviction that which you came out with your statement. And thank you for giving me that bit of a concession that about mushy, about the Indians are very smart people. And I would share that because several years ago, I was told by a pretty sincere, serious senator once that we love you Indians as immigrants. And, because you are professionals, you are hardworking, you take care of your family, you have family values, you take care of your children, you are in the highest median income bracket, you are least problem from a law and order perspective, so there is everything good about you and you don't know how to ask for anything. So the question is, we Indians have never been in the mode of asking for something. So that brings me to your question, to your statement that Indians are no longer mushy, we think very well. That's correct. And that brings me to Shukla ji, aapke paas, is that why is it perceived that, not perceived, that's a reality, I think, that 80% of Indians vote Democrats and they are Democrats. What's wrong with us? Because if you look at it from the perspective, we Indians are essentially conservative. And the conservativeness comes not because we are hardcore right-wingers, but because we are the people who walk the madhyastha path, the middle path. Because there is nothing, the extremes are where they are, but the middle is where the wisdom lies. And that's what drives our point of view. So in this particular thing also, if you look at it this way, that 2-3 issues I think must make Indians think Republican. One of them is, we are in the highest income bracket. I don't think any Indian wants to pay high taxes. Democratic Party is all about high taxes to pay for their plans and their giveaways that they are promising people. So for that one big reason, every Indian must consider low taxation as the reason Trump is favorable. The second one is the law and order part of it. Look at the country now. I don't think, I mean, I have seen Naxal clashes in Bihar and Delhi, Sikh terrorism that happened for a while. And India, we have experienced the violence. So none of us like violence. We are not violent people by very nature. I don't think Indians are violent people as a group. I mean, even our gods are insulted. We say, don't worry, we'll take care of that.
We take it lightly. Yeah.
We take it easily. And the third element is immigration and migration. So these matters, law and order, Republican Party is very firm. Low taxation, Republican Party is very firm. And immigration is one issue which no Indian wants to talk, for the simple reason that the debate in America on immigration, which I heard for the first time when I came here in 91, was in America needs to do comprehensive immigration reform. Since 1991-92, nobody has attempted. No Democrat or presidential or Republican candidate president has attempted to solve the problem. Trump began to address that situation. So with wall, let's stop the flow of illegal people. We need to monitor who comes in the country. He began to bring in performance-driven criteria, quality for people to come here. I think that will benefit Indians more because most of the Indians who are coming here are very qualified people. So I feel that Indians must welcome Republican policies more than they welcome Democratic Party's false promises. Come one, come all, take things free. I don't have to do anything for you. Ravindraji, take your shot on this thought.
So absolutely, Vibhuti, completely agree. So there is a fallacy the way Democratic Party is seen as a pro-immigrant. They are not exactly pro-immigrant. They are basically pro-illegal immigrant. We need to differentiate what is legal versus what is illegal. And as you said, why is America big today? Or like, look at who is running the many tech CEOs, many pharmaceutical. Who are the CEOs right now? A lot of Indian origins coming from good educational background, and then they are running the show over here. So what is given, it is just like in the beginning when, look at back, even we were pro-democratic, let's say 10 years back. We voted for Obama, we used to like because they were seeing like the more liberal, they were seen as standing for more justice, but all those things are gone. What I hear even for the people who are in the H1 and all these immigration issues right now, they were telling since 2008, a lot of impact has happened on the immigration policy. It's not Trump who made the difference in 2016. What is media is trying to just create a false narrative that a lot of things are happening from 2016. So we need to understand it's not like Trump is a pro-legal immigrant, not illegal immigrant. That's huge. And when you are trying to, if you have a policy for illegal immigrant, you need to plan for that. You need to have a separate quota and all that. Go for that. But try doing the right way. The second point I want to talk about law and order. What people are saying right now, this Kamala Harris, this being of Indian origin background is not going to fly with the people because people are able to filter what is like her policy, what are his stand on Kashmir issue, what are his stand on the CAA. So just being like making dosa behind the scene, you just can't fool Indian. They are pretty smart. They understand what is going on. There was a lot of leaning in the beginning, but as things are surfacing out, people are realizing the fact. And you are already seeing the law and order. We have already seen what are so many riots and so many issues in India. We don't want those things to happen over here. You have a differences. There is a right way to raise your voice, right way to negotiate, come to on the table and make a deal. You just can't go to the street and put the things on fire. So these people are losing the narrative they were trying to build. Black life matters. Everything matters in life if it is done in the right way. You just can't hijack the particular agenda and create the disturbances, create the social disorder, and then you think you are trying to support a cause. So these are again coming back to the first point you raised on taxing. So definitely we want to become competitive. We want to pay the tax where it is legal, where it is the right way, but we don't want to pay the thing for free. We don't want to finance the thing where people are not working. So we need to make people accountable, and we are there for more uniform justice, in the sense, depending on your hard work quality, how much you are capable, you should get that reward, and that is what is capitalism. So all 3 points, and people are not realizing this fact. So that is the reason whatever 80-20% gap we had seen in prior time, that is gone. That is right now, I am thinking it's more than 50-50%, the 60-40. So that 80-20 is very, very old number. I'm pretty sure this time we are going to hit maybe 50-50% mark.
Okay, I'm enjoying this conversation. You know, it's so brilliant that each one of you have come up with your thought processes so crystal clear, and that shows the brilliance of the Indian mind here, that we are able to analyze things properly, and that's very important. Preeti, coming to you on the geopolitical, and I want to shift to the other element of it for all of us to comment on, that Mr. Trump's achievements are many. Many people are not giving him credit for that. But in terms of geopolitical aspect, he was the one who called out terrorism the way it was, Islamic terrorism. The whole dialogue shifted that thereafter. Number two is of NATO. NATO as an organization was never contributing its share for the NATO budget. Whereas the Democrats' favorite word is you must give your fair share, right? But they never asked Obama, Clinton, Bush included. Nobody asked Europeans to contribute their fair share to the NATO budget for their own security. Think about it. Trump made them do it, right? He called out China. He didn't even spare Canada and Mexico by abrogating replacing the old trade treaty with a new treaty. The guy went ballistic wherever things were wrong, and he began to fix it. So the world, which was all about free things free and towards liberal agenda, that met with a resistance. The real word resistance is pro-Trump, because he resisted all the democratic freebies that they were throwing around for the rest of the world. Canada is unhappy because nobody knew how high a tariff they were charging on American agricultural products. Nobody figured out that, hey, all the manufacturing shifted to Mexico, and Mexico is still letting all the illegal people come in. There's something wrong in the whole arrangement. So he fixed those things properly, and now he's disliked by almost the entire world. Even China is angry with him, Europe is angry with him, Latin America is angry with him. So he's trying to fix, and I believe that when everybody is telling you you are wrong, that means there is something right you are doing. Your thought on this?
Yeah, look, foreign policy really is at the heart of this election. And I think we are realizing how geopolitically significant the election is. And I think geopolitics is center stage in all of our lives, especially post-COVID. I think we are really seeing the failure of some of these global institutions like the UN, which has not managed to really create peace in the world after so many decades. And then the WHO was absolutely catastrophic in the way that they sort of were not as transparent as they could have, and been honest about what was going on in China. And when they had more information, they sort of kept a lid on it until it really, they were pushed to reveal something. And by that point, to be honest, it was too late. I think we are realizing that what happens in, whether it's South Asia, in Kashmir or in the Middle East, this affects America in so many ways, because this really is a global village. Now, one of the most important geopolitical achievements, I think, of this current US administration is the recent UAE and Israel deal. This is huge, and I think it's shameful that the mainstream media in the US is not really covering this properly. And I'm not hearing Americans have a conversation about how important this is. I think this move has really isolated all the positive members of the OIC with the rogue elements, and we know who these elements are. There are a handful of them, but they think that they are the inheritors of the caliphate, so to speak. And I think the rest of the OIC, including Saudi Arabia, of course, the UAE, I think Oman, Bahrain, all of these other countries are next. And the good thing with this is really good for India. We want UAE and Kingdom of Saudi Arabia has been growing ever so close to India, I think, since Modi entered the scene.
Yes.
And MBS is a huge fan. This is wonderful for us. And I think with this latest deal, we are in one club now. You know, the winning club, I should say, or the cool gang. And it isolates, rogue elements like, our friendly neighbors, so to speak. And they feel it. We can see the rhetoric that's coming out from them. And the other thing, of course, is the BRI, the Belt and Road Initiative, all this great new Silk Road that China has been rolling out. It's again very sad that US media, mainstream media, does not even cover it. But I think this administration knows about it. I think Pompeo has made great statements about China's BRI and how we need to curb it. And he realizes India is such a great ally in that. I think the best thing about this administration is that India becomes a very important strategic ally to the US, which honestly, in reality, they are. I think in the next half century, this is the most powerful relationship. And also both countries have the scope and the scale to really be India is the real only emerging superpower as I see it, because you need scale as well, which India
Right.
obviously has. So
no, that's very significant point you made on that, the geopolitical, the UAE relationship, because I know some people who are very close to the Sheikh in Dubai, and they called me. Let's do business. So, the one thing very interesting about both Dubai and Israel is that both of them are two interesting locations where there is no oil. So they have to depend essentially on everything that is non-oil revenue. And that's how Israel developed in scientific evolution and innovations the way they did. Srilekha ji, the one thing which I'm very proud of Mr. Trump's accomplishment, and that's the reason which that amongst a couple of other reasons I would say that he ab ki baar phir unki bari aani chahiye. So the point which I'm trying to make is that he took on the drug price rationalization. Now, nobody had done this. Crime bill, he fixed it. There are certain achievements to his credit. The media doesn't talk about it. I mean, whoever thought that UAE would happen with Israel relationship will happen? Whoever thought that he would issue an executive order asking pharmaceutical companies to rationalize drug prices, to the extent that he did? And law and order part of it. So he's doing awesome job from that perspective, but the liberal media doesn't give him credit for that. So share something about what you feel about the drug price. And Ravindraji, you tell me about, after Srilekha ji, about the achievements that he has. You think that one or two of his achievements are good enough for Indians and others to vote for him. Srilekha ji, your shot.
So Vibhuti ji, I think the best part about Trump is he already came into this politics as a billionaire, right? So he's not going to benefit from contracting with these big pharma industries. So I think he does not give their way around. So when you're looking at big pharma tech industries, everything is run by liberal policies. And one of the main reasons they support liberals is because they're all for big government. And only when government is as big as to be is when they make money, right? So, and that is precisely, it's not that they're patriotic, it's not that they really think Black Lives Matter. I think what they think is that the more bigger government grows, the more money they can make. So it is kind of nice to have somebody from New York come in as a billionaire that kind of knows that that is their tactic and knows how to wring their hands to get the work done. And that's exactly what he did. I think this was supposed to be done decades back. It's a shameful that our patients here in the most developed country in the world, there are geriatric patients that need to worry whether they need to have the next meal or need to fill in their prescriptions. It is the sad state of affair. And here we are from geopolitical perspective, we are spending billions of dollars all across the world when we do not have our geriatric patients are having to wonder whether they should take another meal or they should fill in their prescriptions. So I'm very, very thankful that Trump went all the way in, behaved like a New Yorker, got the business going, negotiated the best deal for the American. Again, another reason why we all have to vote for Trump, because this is exactly how we need to negotiate the deals within the country and outside the country. So that's about
very well said. That's very well said. Ravindra ji, what about what other factors? I mean, I would put it this way, that now the election campaign has reached its fever pitch in terms of the shrill voice of lies, deceits. So if you were advising Trump, and if you want him to come back, which I believe you do want him to come back, because you lead, both you and Srilekha ji are part of the group that talks about Ab Ki Baar Fir Trump Sarkar, right? So, you know, if you are wanting the thing, what must happen? What must Trump do to ensure that he doesn't fall into the traps of the Democratic Party? And also comment, all three of you, I want your comment on how reliable are these so-called polls, the pulse of the people? I find, as a student of management, when we were doing market research work, you knew exactly how to elicit a response that you wanted to do. So from that point of view, how biased are these polls, considering that majority of the polls are done by liberal channels? So what would you advise Trump how to take the next 60 days?
Sure, Vibhuti is a very, very important point. Many times people do not go behind the real intention and action. Sometimes President Trump tweets are taken in a very negative way because they're very direct. They're very direct and they might sound rude and little bit not polished. So what we need to make sure he just give little bit more polished thought before putting those words into action. So that is one thing I want to make sure, so that the opposition should not make a lot of issues and drama on that. And beside that, I want to highlight one another critical issue. Look at the fact how many war US is fighting right now in this time compared to what was happening in 2013-14. Can even people compare how the situation, how chaotic situation was around the globe? In Middle East, Syria, Libya, Iraq, all those time? How did they forget? And see, we just talked about the foreign, like what happened between UAE and Israel, even Bahrain, like joining the deal recently. So we need to understand, it's not, he's just not hitting the one area. Look at the economy, how well economy is doing today. So we need to understand what Trump should not just give, he's no nonsense. I call him no nonsense president. He believes the action, he go for it. And then when he goes for it, what maybe sometime word may not suit, like the narrative is trying to basically convey. So we just need to be careful about, again, the media is again already against him. New York Times, Wall Street, the same way Modi is hated in India, the media hates Trump over here. So
now we are running out of time very shortly. So now coming back to two final points between Srilekha ji and Preeti ji, what I would like to ask is, you know, I learned my life lessons from sports. I have been a sportsman, and I like to say that to use the NFL, National Football League analogy, I'll say, you said something very, Ravindraji, very important, words that matter. So going forward in these 60 days, considering the fact that media will always pick on everything you say, everything you do, I would say, don't throw an interception and don't fumble the ball. You know, that's two key things which Mr. Trump must bear in mind. What you say matters. So this is the time when flamboyance is over. Now it has to be hard hit, measured hit, calculated hit on your opposition to make sure that they don't get up. Don't give them an excuse. Don't give them the ball to play. Srilekha ji, your thoughts in 30 seconds, followed by Preeti.
I would say that we continue to tweet. Continue to tweet honestly, because that is how he won. We should never forget that his strategy was be straightforward, talk to middle class America, because middle class America is the heart and blood of this country. It is not the sophisticated Silicon Valley that is the heart and blood of this country. And through his tweeting directly, he speaks to me. So do not sway by this poll and try to be a sophisticated person that you are not. And it's okay. That's a compliment. Speak to middle America, speak to me, speak to my children, speak to our communities, and talk about economy, healthcare, Supreme Court appointments, coronavirus outbreak, how you manage, violent crimes, pro-life, Second Amendment, race and ethnic inequality, and Trump will be a winner.
Oh, great. Very well put. Very well put. You should join his campaign team. I hope they get to know you. Preeti, your final word on this.
I think number one, don't worry about the polls. We know what happened in 2016. I think post both the party conventions, suddenly, actually, the polls are even they're now showing a shift. So don't worry about that. Just focus on your schedule, your program, your path. Keep in mind that the silent majority is large. There's a lot of people who are not vocal about who they're going to vote, and they're sort of silent conservatives. And this is actually huge in number. Don't worry so much about coastal areas and so on. I think the middle of America thinks a different way. I think leading up to the election, we're going to see more lawlessness. We're going to see more violence, more riots, these things, more protests, and these things will actually help the party that seems to be more grounded, more sane, is not pushing for venom and negative rhetoric and so on. Try to be positive and uplifting, keep America first, and talk about a future of America, and how much you love the country and what you want to do for it moving forward. I think there's a big enough chunk of people that are wise enough to see that. And please reach out to the Indian American voters and keep that. Because I think we are emotional people, and when we see a tweet like that from the administration, we do get excited. And I think and his campaign is very smart. They know that we are this segment is an ally, so they should keep us in mind and sort of really engage with us, because I think we can also
Excellent.
really make him go across the line.
Thank you, all three of you, for being today. Very, very great conversation. I really enjoyed it. So I hope my viewers enjoyed it too, because we made a case that why we as a group, as voters, must look at Trump more seriously as a India benefit candidate, as a candidate who will do things for India, as a candidate who means well to us and to the general people, because all that he cares for, make America great again. So that's the point which one has to bear in mind, that it's not a vote bank politics. Democrats are playing vote bank politics. Believe it or not, give a thought to it. If you notice, Democrats are doing exactly what the Congress party in India did. Promise things for free, create a vote bank. And I'm sad to say that the vote bank that is advising Mr. Biden about India-related issues, that will hurt him, because that is what I call, from our point of view, an adharmic practice, and that must not be allowed to happen. That's where we Indians must stay united and look at the element that benefits us. Politics is about recognizing who does the right thing for you. And from that point of view, in my opinion, I think Mr. Trump is doing the right thing for the country as well as the world around us, because he's bringing accountability to place. I can't imagine. I tip my hat for NATO being made to pay for their budget contribution. I'm proud to say that today the world recognizes there is a terrorism, is Islamic terrorism. It's not only India saying it, but the rest of the world saying it. Today we know that all treaties, trade treaties, were impoverishing America. Today we are back here. We are talking seriously about issues, and that's what is important. Law and order for a capitalist system to succeed, law and order is a must, because businesses thrive when there is peace and calm. If the businesses don't thrive, and remember one thing, these violences, protest is yet another matter, but violence, when Black Lives Matter is hijacked by Antifa, then you realize there's something wrong. With these words, have a great weekend. I end the show today, and have a great weekend. Talk to you again, and thank you very much, everybody. Namaste.